We'll now go through Article 16, which deals with directors' fees. Now, while the heading is directors' fees, in some treaties, the reference includes not only director fees, but also remuneration paid to top-level managerial positions. We're going to look at that as well, but principally, since we have been focusing on the India-US treaty for the purpose of this clause, we have considered that particular clause for the purpose of our discussion. Now, what may happen is that there might be a company. Let's say there is an Indian company which is there, right? There is a non-resident who is appointed as a director of this Indian company, right? This person who acts as a director of the Indian company gets certain fees as a director remuneration or director fees actually from this company. How would the taxation of that work is something which is covered by the provision of Article 16. Had it been that Article 16 was not covered, then in that case either provision of Article 14 or Article 15, right, depending on whether the person who's acting as a director is acting in his independent capacity or as an employee of this Indian company, would have been applicable. Now the tax provision in these articles are different vis-a-vis what is there in Article 16, which is what we are going to see. But like I said, since there's a specific provision for director fees, it is Article 16 which will be applicable in this case instead of the provision of Article 14 or Article 15. However, if Article 16 is not present in a treaty, then one can refer to the provision of Article 14 or 15 as the case may be, depending on which one of them is applicable. So let us look at the provision of Article 16 of the India-USA Treaty. It says, director fees and similar payments. So the nature of payment which is covered is director's fees and similar payments which are derived by a resident of a contracting state. So let's say we draw a small graph over here. So there's a non-resident, right? Now we are talking about this person and this is an Indian company. So any director fees plus similar payments which might be made by the Indian company to the non-resident, okay, which are derived by a resident of a contracting state, let's say a resident of US, in his capacity. Now this is the key word which is there insofar as this particular article is concerned. The payment, the similar payment which is being referred, the director's fees which is being referred, should be given to the non-resident in his capacity as a member of board of directors of the company, right? If he gets certain other payments, right, so he's also acting as a consultant, providing some advice, strategic guidance, etc., not in the capacity of a member of a board of directors. Those payments are not covered by Article 16. Like I mentioned a short while ago, in that case you might have to see whether or not the provision of Article 14 or Article 15 will apply, right? For those payments, it is not Article 16 which is applicable. Article 16 is applicable only for payments in the nature of director fees or similar payments which have been drawn by this resident, derived by this resident in his capacity of member of board of directors. Who's member of board of directors? Of a company which is a resident of the other contracting state. This company is not a resident of the country where the non-resident is a resident. It's a resident of a country which is the other contracting state. In this particular case, it is India. May be taxed in that other state. Other state here refers to India. So if there is a non-resident, if he's acting in the capacity of board of directors of an Indian company, and there are director fees or similar payments made to him in his capacity of acting as a director, such payment may be liable to tax in India. What that means is, while India gets the right to tax these payment, even US has a right to tax this payment. Of course, they have to give a credit for the taxes which have been paid in India. The method will depend obviously upon Article 23 as to the elimination of double taxation, right? But it is something which is applicable in this case. Now, one point which I want to make here is, in some of the treaties, like I mentioned, even the remuneration paid to top level managerial officials is covered under Article 16, right? But in the India-US treaty, that is not covered here, which means if there is a top level managerial position which a person holds and gets some payment, that also is going to be taxed under Article 14 and 15, unless this top level managerial function amounts to acting as a board of director, member of the board of director of the Indian company. So what are the issues which arise in connection with Article 16? The first one is, what should be derived? It is directors' fees and other similar payments. We'll just come to what does amount to other similar payments. Who should derive it? It should be a resident of the other contracting state, which is US. Now, when I say other contracting state, I'm referring it from an Indian point of view, right? If you look at the reverse, then it will be a resident of India. In what capacity? As a member of board of director of a company which is a resident of the other contracting state. Other contracting state here refers to India. So the person is a resident of US, the company is a resident of India, or vice versa. Who has the right to tax? India also has a right to tax. It is not an exclusive right, right? The right is non-exclusive. Even US can tax such payments, but then US is going to give you a credit for the taxes which have been paid in India. Let's look at what is the meaning of directors' fees and other similar payments, right? So directors' fees will typically include the sitting fees which is paid to a director for attending the meeting of board of directors, right? This is the most common fee which is going to be derived by a person who's acting as a director. However, it is going to exclude the fee which is paid for day-to-day management. So if this person who's a director also acts as a manager, right, then the fee paid to him in his capacity for managing the stuff is not going to be taxed under Article 16. It will be taxed under Article 14 or 15, depending on the nature of contract that he has with the company. Similarly, if he were to act as a consultant, right, as an independent consultant, the taxation will be under Independent Personal Services Clause, right? If he's acting as an employee, right, the remuneration which is not relating to the work that he does in his capacity as a director will be taxable under Dependent Personal Services. What will other similar payments include? It may include something like a director's commission, and it will also include the benefit in kind, like use of residence or a vehicle which might be provided to the director, any stock options which might be available to him, right? Insurance coverage, club membership, etc. At the cost of repetition, again, I would like to point in over here that all these benefits should be given to him because he is serving in his capacity as a member of board of directors of the company. But what would happen in case, a person is acting in a dual capacity? So let's say, for example, there's a person who's drawing a director fees of $100 from an Indian company. He's also acting as an employee for which he's getting a remuneration of $10,000. And he is drawing a professional fees of $20,000 from the company. Now, you need to bifurcate all these three and see where each one of them is taxable. Director fees is taxable under Article 16, right, where both India and US has a right to tax it. In case of payment to an employee, these will be taxable Article 15, Dependent Personal Services, and depending on where the employment is exercised, right, these fees is going to be taxed. Now, in case of director's fees, one important thing which comes to my mind as I discuss this point exercised is that it doesn't matter where the director is rendering his services. Okay, what matters is where is the company of whom is acting as a director is a resident of, right? The reason is that when you talk about a company, let's say an Indian company, if it makes a payment to a person as a director fees, the Indian company has a tax erosion, or the base of India, the tax base of India is eroded. Why? Because this payment is allowed as a deduction, right? Therefore, it is felt justified that this fee should be taxed in India. Coming back, insofar as an employee is concerned, wherever the employment is exercised, that's where it's going to be taxed. For professional fees, the right to tax will be with US unless this person has a fixed base in India or he renders services for 90 or more days during the relevant taxable year. So the tax condition for all these three are going to be separate and apply separately. So fee taxable under Article 16, $100, 15, $10,000, and 14, $20,000.